I'm Nick Shell, here in glorious Tennessee in the summer, the hot, humid summer. And I'm going to share with you how my inspiration to do all these hair loss videos is ultimately rooted in what I do for a living. Maxwell Smart recently asked me, by the way, what do you do for a living? You know, we all see you walking around those brick buildings, you know, 2 or 3 times a day in your videos. What do you actually do inside those buildings? How do you support your family? Okay, well, I'm going to talk about that, but what you're going to realize is there's a perfect connection between what I do for a living, what I get paid to do, and how it relates to all my hair videos. Because what you ultimately see in my videos is I'm sharing a mindset with you. I talked about the brain transplant. Forget about the hair, let me just transfer brains with you and then you'll be good to go even without hair. Ultimately, that's what I do for a living. So let's get into it and let's look at the parallels and how I tend to have this confidence about my theories. Let's get into it. I think this will be fun. It's different, but I think you're going to enjoy this. Okay? So here's how it works. 5 years ago today, one of the people at the company said, Nick, you're in charge of basically creating this department, heading up this department. Now, I work for a trucking company. As random as that sounds, Nashville is huge for trucking companies and the trucking industry. And there's so many interstates that go through Nashville, Tennessee. So we've got over 1,000 drivers, and turnover is high in over-the-road trucking. You got a lot of drivers that just can't do it for that long or just can't make money. So it's that way in the trucking industry, just like it is with fast food. So they put me in charge. Nick, find a way to save us money, to save our drivers, figure this out. They gave me a computer monitor, and like an old school, like huge one. They gave me a phone, and they gave me a list of all the drivers who worked for the company and said, call each one of them, make sure they get a call once every month. So I did that, and after a couple months, especially up to the first year, I realized there's a pattern here. The people who make the most money and are successful and happy, they're doing certain things differently than the people who are average. And they're doing things the opposite of the people who are below average and unhappy. So what I decided is, as I call everybody once a month, I'll start sharing with the average and the below average the 5 habits of the people who have already figured this out on their own. Because if they follow that model, they can be like those who are already successful, no matter what they try to use it as an excuse of why they're not making money, or whoever they wanted to blame for not being successful at what they did. And what we found is the people who were open-minded, whether they were average or below average, or even above average already, if they apply those habits and were aware of exactly what they are, everyone succeeded. The above average people, the average, and the below average all succeeded if they were willing to do those things. And that's ultimately what created, and of course from there our department grew, and now it's been around for 5 years. It was ultimately an experiment which I was able to prove to all the powers that be in my company that, hey, I can figure this out, I'm making this work, and I'm saving this money now. All right, but let's go back to hair loss. How does all that relate to you, and how does that have anything to do with what I do on my breaks when I talk to you about hair loss? Well, here's what it has to do with. I realize that it's all ultimately about the mindset. As I've been saying to you, show me a man who is balding. Show me a balding man who can't, and I'll show you a balding man who can, right? That's one of my sayings, trademark. Show me a balding man who can't, I'll show you a balding man who can. And it's the same concept with those truck drivers. The ones who figured out the right way to think about things, instead of blaming other people, they're thinking, how can I get ahead of this problem that everyone else is? There's got to be a way around this. And so ultimately that mindset helped me realize, you know what? There's victorious people and then there's victims. And these victims can choose to be victorious if they've... So then I realized, and that's what you were seeing with this channel. I would say the majority of people who watch my channel ultimately can't cross over to that victorious side. They remain a victim. They're not ready for it yet. They're understanding it, but they're not there yet. I'd say maybe, I don't know, a quarter. That's just a guess. Maybe a quarter of the people who watch my videos, they're able to process the information and think, wow, even though it's not what I want to hear, Nick's ultimately right. That if I'm able to adopt my thinking and realizing what actually matters and what people actually find value in me, and I focus on that, I can overcome this problem internally. And certain people get to that point. Certain other people never quite do. But you know what I keep doing on my 2 or 3 videos a day? I keep reinforcing this positive message. I make it personal based on the comments that people leave. And by making it personal, I've heard a saying before that the more specific you are, the more universal you are. So that's why I like to read those comments, because I think whereas I can say the same thing over and over to certain people and they get it the first time, other people need to hear it the 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th time, and by the 23rd time they hear it, through a different lens, of a different voice, then it sinks in. So that's what I do for a living. I've been doing that specific role for 5 years, but I've been at this trucking company for over a decade. That's what I actually do for a living. That's how that's how my wife and I have our house and our backyard here in Tennessee. That's what pays the bills. Of course, I've said before, my wife makes more money than I do. She works for Vanderbilt University. She has a very important job, and she gets paid even better than I do and gets better benefits. So the money I make from these videos and the money that I make from my blog on the side, Family Friendly Daddy blog, helps me to still not match what she makes, but at least help my share out a little bit more. So that's part of my motivation too of why I do these, because it helps out our family income. Imagine being married to such a beautiful woman who accepts you as you are and makes more money than you do, So there's a lot of inspiration there on my part to do this, but of course I love helping you out as well. So hopefully this was a fun, different kind of video to show you that what I'm doing in those brick buildings all day, I'm taking a break and I'm shooting these videos to share with you. So now it's no longer a mystery. That's what I'm doing inside those brick buildings. That's what I do for a living. And that's how ultimately my mindset, see, no one taught me how to think this way. I figured this out on my own. Why? Because I am victorious and I'm going to find a way to make things work. When I started this department 5 years ago, it was all a test. I was told, Nick, this is just an experiment. They may shut this down after a couple months. But look, 5 years strong, it's still going well. The department's grown, it's saving us money. I was able to figure it out. And if I can do it just by figuring things out and looking for patterns and looking for different mindsets, I'm confident that you can overcome your hair loss. I'm confident that you can, if you're able to choose to think like the victorious people, not like the victims. I'm Nick Shell, and I appreciate your support, though I'm not running for any kind of political office.